we should go to the Capes Corner, right? We should go to the superhero films, and we should go to the most heartbreaking news that hit me this week in terms of films. The Batman 2 has been delayed to October 2nd, 2026. It initially was slated for a 2025 release. The delay is due to the script, first off, being far from complete. I believe was interrupted by the SAG strikes that were happening and the lack of availability for stages for filming. Ricky Flex, before I get to your initial reactions, you know where my mind jumped immediately? Robert Pattinson. He is someone that we associate as a young actor, but by the time the Batman 2 is released in theaters, he will be a year two Batman and be 40 plus years old. That was sad when I thought about that. This is a guy that we are proud that's like, okay, it's not a first year Batman. It's not him in the complete origin of the role, right? It's him becoming Batman year two. And I still like the superheroes to be young, especially in their second film. And a big critique I have with casting of certain iconic characters that are supposed to be heavy action oriented is that they shouldn't be too old, especially early on in a franchise. But with this 4 year gap from the Batman, which initially was supposed to come out in 2021, comes out in 2022, and now we have the Batman Part 2 supposed to come out in 2025, now comes out in 2026. It just kind of grinds my gears that we're getting started at a later date. I don't think it's gonna be a huge deal because Robert Pattinson's a young, good-looking dude overall. But if I'm believing a year two Batman, I assume he's around 30 years old. All of a sudden, he's over 40. You know what I'm saying?
It's a great point. I just think at the end of the day, Robert Pattinson doesn't look like he's like
Right. No,
40.
it's
I
Hollywood. Just
it's
like
like
Robert Downey Jr. at Endgame is like 60, dude.
which is crazy. Yeah, I just quickly looked up Christian Bale. He was 38 years old when The Dark Knight came out. And I feel like Robert Pattinson when he's 38 looks younger than Christian Bale at 38 by a lot. And it's not that doesn't mean it's good or bad. I'm just saying I feel like it's gonna be fine. I'm more worried about the third movie, Batman Part 3. That is the problem where it's like, all right, if we don't do a time jump, then there you get some age issues. But let's just focus on Batman Part 2. Yeah, no, this was bad news. This was really bad news because we could just talk about, oh, we don't get the movie this year, or oh, Robert Pattinson age issues. For me, it's like 2025. Like we are supposed to have Fantastic Four, Superman Legacy, Batman Part 2. This is supposed to be an all-time movie year, let alone comic book year.
The
And
return of comic book films.
and we lose the greatest, oh, arguably the greatest comic book hero movie of the year, delayed a year. That is terrible in my eyes. So we're gonna get this right. I like how it's still October. Batman, give me long Halloween vibes. I like it, but 2026 not ideal. That is my biggest takeaway. Is that it's not 2025 where it could be the greatest comic book year we've had since '08 probably.
Yeah, no, that's the bigger deal. Like I was just thinking like Robert Pattinson, like he does such like exciting work whenever he signs on to a project. He's gonna be Mickey 17. Obviously another movie that got delayed with director Bong
We're
Joon-ho.
down bad right now, Doc. We're down bad.
Yeah, it's really tough to hear like Robert Pattinson productions getting pushed back because when's the next time we're gonna see Robert Pattinson? It's literally next year with Mickey 17. And then he's ramping up production with the Batman Part 2 right now. Like this is what happens sometimes when you're sucked into franchises. Like it's like now it's prolonged a delay and now you're robbed from other opportunities here. I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to pay off. And I think the Batman Part 2 has a chance to kind of do what Dune Part 2 did. And that's why it's so heartbreaking that this is getting delayed. Just because you think of okay, look at the filmmaking capability that the Batman showed. How can we level up in the Batman Part Two? And this also limits. Like I wasn't convinced that this movie was going to be a trilogy. I always held hope that it would go beyond three films because I always thought Robert Pattinson he's young enough in the role. We're trying to create a universe around this character, right? The Reeves verse that we've called it. We had the Penguin coming out. There was supposed to be an Arkham Asylum series that has been scrapped. It's now going to be set in the DCU with James Gunn, not inside of Matt Reeves's universe. It just I had hopes that I don't have to look at the finality of this project. I can just go into every film on its own and appreciate it. Now it just seems like with this delay, now when's the Batman Part 3 coming out? It's going to be 2029, 2030, and there's no way I can see Robert Pattinson continue to play Batman after that. So that's kind of also where my mind went, Ricky Flex. Just a little bit frustrating because I like it seems like everyone just expects a trilogy to be made. Let's just see how the movie performs. Like Spider-Man 4 that made news this week because was it 15 years ago Sam Raimi and Sony had announced that Spider-Man 4 was happening and we never got it. Who knows if we still will get that movie? But now we've fallen into this trap where no. It's a trilogy for everything, right? It just doesn't have to be like that.
I agree. I agree, but this is different. This is different. If we don't get a trilogy for this, that's I think
It's prestige.
I think it's bad news for DC. I think it's bad for James Gunn, someone that just took over a DC helm. I think it's bad news for DC in general. Bad news for the Batman comic book character. You can't like Spider-Man 4, like it was the end of a trilogy. Spider-Man 3 was a lackluster performance compared to everything else critically and also box office wise. So when we didn't get it, it's not like, oh, like holy crap, like we didn't get it. It was like, no, like they just went on to the next Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield. Here it's like we can't just move on to the next Batman. We're not in that era anymore. You move on that quickly to the James Gunn Batman, you have problems. You have problems. So there's absolutely no way we're not getting a trilogy to this. And Robert Pattinson's committed. He is committed, and I don't care how old he is or whatnot. In 2030, that is crazy that we're talking about a movie 6 years from now, 2024, 2030. We would not be doing that in 2010 to 2016, but we are in that era now where we have to be talking about that. We're in the era of the TDI checkup, and that's what we're doing. And the fact is, we will have the Batman Part 3 after the Batman Part 2. We are going to have that.
I'm saying we don't go beyond the Batman Part 3. Like Batman 3 will be a build up to his final role. Like we are getting the Batman Part 3 because I mean Batman in its like environment with COVID and everything still made nearly $800 million, right?
Remarkable.
And it, like to me, the Batman is similar to Dune Part 1 where it's like look at the technicals of this movie, look at like the capabilities of this franchise. Like the Batman Part 2 could be Dune Part 2.
Greg
Like very,
Fraser.
it could be there. Greg Fraser is he's the common ground. He's the common ground. But it's just Robert Pattinson's getting older, 2030, right? He's all of a sudden becomes he starts his career as a 36 or 35-year-old Batman. He ends his career as like a 46, 47-year-old, and it's only been 3 movies. That's crazy. That's nuts.
It is crazy. And like you have Barry Keoghan, Paul Dano, like you have all these great actors attaching yourself to this. And Matt Reeves, a great young film director, young as in to normal directors in Hollywood nowadays. It's you can't bail on it. If you bail on it, then Warner Brothers should just shut up shop. They should be like, hey, you know what? No young film director should ever come with us again. That's why I have faith in this. And the same with young actors. Like, oh, if you're a young an upcoming actor, don't go with us anymore. If you shut down the Batman, because it's not just the
Twice.
Batman
Twice.
twice. It's not just the trilogy in the movies. It's also the Penguin series coming out. I know we talked about the Arkham series. I feel like there will be another spin-off series at some point. You're building up this universe again, a DC Elseworlds project, not like the DCU. Again, this is like outside the DCU. You're building up this project with HBO, with Max. You don't just do that with a Colin Farrell. So this will be bad if they don't complete this trilogy and complete this arc of this universe. If you don't, that means you aren't serious people. You
All
aren't
right.
serious people.
All right, Logan Roy. Like they're finishing it. I'm just like thinking also, like the Penguins coming. Like, are they going to continue to have these series that are between films? If like it's such a large gap, does that make it more attainable. Like it's a greater opportunity to have more series inside the films, between films, because of this gap. I don't know. I think it's just a bad happenstance of like circumstances that like you literally have these back-to-back delays. It's just not ideal. I think the idea that it's not a part of the DCU makes it like a little bit more flexible. It's not like following a certain timeline. It goes by the pace of each of these major films.